On a number of occasions on this channel, we've explained a variety of ways in which younger people seem to have had it worse than older generations. One of the lesser discussed issues, though, is the driving test crisis, which sees younger people waiting almost 6 months to secure a driving test. For many, especially those who live in rural communities, having to wait half a year to get a driving license just makes life that bit more difficult, making it harder to meet up with friends and limiting opportunities for work. Clearly, considering this began during the COVID-19 pandemic, which started more than half a decade ago, the fact that this remains a problem shows that something has gone terribly wrong. So in this video, we're going to take a look into the crisis, how bad it really is, and how the government could go about fixing it. Want to feel more inside of politics? If so, check out our new range of posters, which take you inside Westminster and the Capitol building, or our map of Brussels, which shows the true geographic scale of the EU. Click the link in the description for the full collection, and get 20% off for a limited time using code YouTube20. Now, let's start by explaining how driving tests in the UK actually work. Essentially, in order to legally drive a car on UK roads, citizens need to pass 2 tests, the theory test and the practical test. The theory test is a computer-based test that takes place at a specifically designed test centre, and the practical test is a test of someone's actual driving abilities, conducted by a driving examiner. Prior to 2020, the number of both kinds of tests remained relatively stable year by year, around 2 million car theory tests conducted each year, and around 1.6 million practical tests. But during the first and second lockdowns of the COVID-19 pandemic, all tests, both theory and practical, were cancelled due to public health concerns, creating a backlog of 1.1 million untaken tests, which won't be fully cleared until November 2027. Fortunately, the theory tests bounced back pretty quickly after the pandemic. In fact, in the years since, the number of theory tests conducted has actually increased by around 200,000 a quarter, which is useful, considering that during the pandemic itself, there was a 52.2% decrease in theory tests versus the previous year. What this means is that according to the most recent estimates by the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, the executive agency in charge of managing driving tests, between 2024 and 2025, people waited an average of only 3.3 weeks for a theory test, comfortably below the 4-week target. However, this was not the same for the practical driving tests. The pandemic caused significantly more disruption to these kinds of tests, with a 72.7% decrease in the number of practical tests in the pandemic year versus the prior year. This is mainly due to the fact that when tests were allowed again between lockdowns 1 and 2, only around 200,000 were conducted per quarter, half the normal rate. And while in the years since the pandemic, the number of tests administered has returned to normal, they haven't increased to make up for this shortfall. Considering that the backlog in 2020-21 stood at 1.1 million, this just hasn't been enough to clear it. Even now, 5 years on from the pandemic, the backlog is estimated to be 360,000. As a result of this, the DVSA has shown that on average, people are waiting 21.9 weeks for a practical driving test, an increase from the 16.1 week average in 2023-24, and significantly above the 7-week target. So why has the number of theory tests been able to increase to meet demand, while practical tests just haven't? Well, it's likely due to the nature of the tests themselves. Practical tests require a physical driving examiner in the car, whereas only a small number of physical employees are required to oversee a big group of people sitting the theory test. It is therefore significantly easier to scale up to meet the new demand for more theory tests than it is for the practical ones. But the issue with practical driving test waiting lists specifically is that it encourages actions, both by driving instructors and learners, that make the waitlist even longer. Driving instructors, aware of the significant backlog, are booking tests as soon as they take on new students, holding on to said bookings and even transferring them to students who are ready to take their practical tests. Under the current rules, this is completely above board, as individuals are able to change the details of their driving test slots up to 6 times without charge, as long as the changes are made 3 days before the time of the actual booking. This would be bad if it was just driving instructors doing it, but there are plenty of reports of people buying driving tests for £65 and then selling them onto other people for up to £500. Just to give a sense of the scale at which this is happening, back in 2019 only 39,000 tests were swapped, but by 2024 this had risen to 327,000, a nearly 10-fold increase. Obviously, the only reason that any of this is happening is because there's a shortage of tests. But what this does is actually reduce the availability of tests even further. That's why the government has confirmed that in spring, it'll be changing the rules so that only the learner is able to book the tests. The number of changes allowed will be reduced to 2, and that changes will have to be made at the latest 10 working days before the test. They've also proposed a new rule which would see learners made to wait 6 months after taking their theory test before they can take their practical test. The problem with this approach is that these are demand-side fixes. It should free up some availability, but it won't fix the overall cause of the problem, that there just aren't enough driving examiners. While the government had previously committed to hiring an additional 450 driving examiners, it's so far managed to net just 83, despite 19 different recruitment campaigns since 2021. Government figures show that around 4,600 people currently working at the DVSA, although we don't know how many of them are driving examiners. So an increase of 450 would actually have been fairly significant, increasing the overall headcount of the DVSA by about 10%. Unfortunately though, as I just mentioned, the government didn't manage it. So why not? Well, a lot of it comes down to the fact that driving examiners just aren't that well paid, and it's hard to entice people into the job. A Freedom of Information request from 2015 revealed that the salary for driving examiners was between £24,484 and £25,708, a couple of £1,000 less than the average UK salary in 2015, which was £27,600. In 2025, however, the starting salary for driving examiners was around £28,000, significantly below the £39,100 average salary last year. When you consider that driving instructors are self-employed and typically earn up to £40,000 a year, it's not surprising that there's a shortage of driving examiners. So if the government wants to reduce the driving test crisis, it needs to not only address the demand side issues, but the supply side issues too, namely by paying driving examiners more. Whether or not you believe that the new year brings a new you, there's always pressure to find some way to better yourself when January rolls round. But where do you even start? Building new healthy habits isn't always easy to jump straight into. So that's why we always turn to Brilliant. That's because Brilliant focuses on real transformative learning, all on adapting to your own established skill level. It starts you at the right level based on your background, designs practice sets and reviews, all personalized for you. Brilliant helps you to advance at your ideal pace, giving you the best chance to stick to your learning goals. For example, even if you're not a maths person, Brilliant will push you towards achieving what you didn't think was possible. Their comprehensive catalogue takes you from foundational maths through to algebra, all the way to college-level calculus, with more and more courses being added each month. Brilliant has truly helped us to expand our skill set and kept us coming back every day to create those habits which help us grow. Suddenly, it's not so hard to stick to your resolutions. To start the new year right and begin or continue your learning journey, you can try Brilliant for free for a full 30 days. Just go to brilliant.org/TLDR, scan the QR code on screen, or click the link in the description. And Brilliant has also given our viewers 20% off an annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited access to everything on Brilliant.